Hi. In between doing some errands today, using my day off to do the things that need to be done. Just as I'm speaking, two things popped in my mind that I forgot to do. Anyway, I'll do that tomorrow. As I was doing those things, I popped into a few secondhand op shops, charity shops that I haven't been into for a few months. And I found a few things, nothing amazing at all, but 3 CDs for $3. And yeah, I'll talk about them as I go along. And first one here, as you can see, is the Essential Herbie Hancock, which I have not opened. This was bought at the SPCA store for $1. Now, the SPCA store, the SPCA is the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, something like that. The animal charity is always a little bit more, well, not always, is often a bit more expensive than the other shops. They kind of have an average price of sometimes around, I'd say, $3 to $4, but this one wasn't. This was just $1. And it is, yes, you can see the Essential Herbie Hancock. Now, Herbie Hancock is someone who's I've never owned anything from, don't have any albums of his or any compilations. You don't actually see his stuff around as much as other jazz musicians, and that, I think, is twofold reason, at least in my mind, is that Herbie Hancock's pretty popular and famous, and he's kind of named a lot in lists of influential and important musicians, not even just jazz musicians, but musicians in general. And I think he had some crossover appeal. But at the same time, he's not in the echelon of jazz musicians. And this is coming from someone who knows very little about jazz, beyond the, well, I guess I'm kind of the best to talk about it because I am just kind of a run-of-the-mill layman when it comes to jazz. I know Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker and Duke Ellington and Thelonious Monk and Charles Mingus, kind of all the ones that I guess the average person could kind of maybe name off. And I'd say Herbie Hancock is maybe in that level, but maybe not, maybe a step below. And that might be because he was a little bit younger, I think. He wasn't in that heyday of the 50s and 60s, or 40s, like some of those other ones I just named. I think he was more I think he's still alive. I might be wrong on that, but as I'm talking, I'll check on that. But I think, I know he was younger than those other ones. He wasn't that generation. And so when he came up, jazz, its place in popular culture had maybe, he is alive, he's 86. Although, hang on, he was still being around. He would have been 20 in the 60s, in 1960s. So, well, then what? Hang on. He's still touring as well. Is that the Newport Jazz Festival? He's playing today in Newport. Is that what it's called, the Newport Jazz Festival? Or am I thinking of the Newport Folk Festival? I think it is. This seems familiar. Fort Adams State Park in Rhode Island, Newport. Isn't that? Yes, it is the Newport Jazz. Well, okay. In America, you can see Herbie Hancock today. Well, it's July 31st in America. That's actually tomorrow in America. It's July 31st here in New Zealand today. Hang on. How's that possible? All right, hang on. I might be talking at my bum right here. I typed in Herbie. I'll show you why am I not showing this. I typed in Herbie Hancock into Google, and it came up before I'd even say it says events: Newport, Rhode Island, July 31st, Newark, New Jersey. He's playing 2 shows in one day. Well, I guess that one's in the morning and that one's in the evening. But for an 86-year-old man, that's that can't be easy. And then he's playing the next day. He's playing in Portland, ME. Was that Maine? Is there a Portland in Maine? It's not Portland, Oregon. Probably is. That's in the northeast, isn't it? So maybe it is. But regardless, he's playing the next day. This guy's touring like he's it is. Jeez. He's going back to the Newport Jazz Festival the next day for another set. Then across to Indianapolis. Touring throughout. Got quite a heavy tour schedule. Well, I guess there's not kind of... Maybe I guess summer is kind of the touring season in America, isn't it? The festival season, maybe I should be thinking. But you know that's something you'd see, you know, from a much younger person, especially that first 2 in one day there, then 2 following days, and then a few days off, then 2 more, and then a few days off. Incidentally, System of a Down have announced a tour down here, down Australia and New Zealand with Faith No More. They say co-headlining, but it's not co-headlining because I prefer Faith No More magnitudes more than System of a Down. And I like System of a Down. I'm a fan of System of a Down, but for me, Faith No More is just a band that I love far, far, far more than System of a Down. So they say it's a co-headlining tour, but it's not a co-headlining tour. It's that's a support slot that Faith No More are playing, because they're playing stadium shows, and I know that Faith No More could not get anywhere near to doing a stadium show by themselves. They would, the last time they were here, they played at, well, actually the last time I saw them at least, I think they played after I'd left New Zealand. But anyway, 2010, I saw them at Spark Arena. And I'm not sure if they actually sold that out or not. It would have been close to a sellout. And that's kind of like a 10,000 capacity type arena. But to go to a stadium, which some of those stadiums, at least the one they're playing down in Wellington, I think the capacity is 30-ish thousand. Faith No More have never been at that level. So therefore, a System of a Down is the one that's driving a lot of the ticket sales. But my point in bringing this up is that the tour schedule they've got, they play one in Brisbane, then they've like 5 days off. Then they play one in Sydney, and they got another like bunch of days off. Then they're Melbourne, and then across to Wellington. They're not playing Auckland, and there's like a week between each concert. And I know that might be because if there's excessive demand, they'll maybe put on some other shows in between. I know that's often the case, but even if they do put another show, there's still oodles of time between each show. And these guys are comparatively young men, System of a Down and Faith No More, and they're late 40s, 50s. I guess some of the guys in Faith No More would be in their 60s by now. Maybe Roddy and Billy might be in their early 60s or getting close to it. Anyway, sorry, I'm off all over the place. My point is that he might be in the the generation after those other guys I mentioned. But looking at this, it says, no, he played in the Miles Davis Quintet from 63 to 68. But Headhunters, I guess, is the album, or certainly the one that I'm most familiar with. It's that one that's got that kind of quite... hang on. Quite a memorable Elmart. That came out in 73, which is kind of the fusion era. That's after Bitches Brew, which was, I think, 68, 69. But kind of rambling here anyway. Let's show the CD. It's a double disc. But what the hell is going on here? See, these people, they taped that up so I couldn't check it. Look at this. Surely that's not how it came originally. They're stuck on top of each other. Like, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. You just saw that. I pushed the button, and I thought it was only one. No, the double disc is directly under it. So the surface of disc 1 is rubbing onto the top of disc 2. That can't be what is intended. But this says this is a super jewel box. So this is how I assume this is how it came. Yes, because you can see the inlay back, whatever you call it, panel is cut specifically for the super jewel box type with the rounded edges and this kind of thing. Whereas a typical you know, jewel case is square, isn't it? It doesn't have that cut-off part here, like you see. So if I took this orange inlaid back panel out and tried to stick it in here, there would be a gap missing because it is specifically being cut for it. So therefore, this must have come like that, with the discs stacked one on top of each other. Maybe that's why they see the jewel case hub is super high. But that's often the case with these super jewel box, these modern kind of 2000, or this kind of 2011, that generation of CDs often had the super jewel box strengthened, rounded with the press release and the strengthened jewel case hub that is a lot deeper. And maybe that's intended to be able to stack the CDs one on top of each other, because you can see even with that one in there, there's still all that room in there. And you think, wow, something else can go on top, and it can. Both in there securely, not moving, so maybe that's how it's supposed to be. I've never seen that before. Strange. You know, 2011, this is the account on Sony Music. This is really, 2011, I'm trying to think. By 2011, CD releases by major labels were really kind of coming towards the end of their primacy, and that might maybe even by that stage records had already taken them over. But what I mean is that shortly after this, in the 2010s, and certainly now in the 2020s, when a major label is releasing a CD, they are not paying much attention or putting extra effort into the CD case itself. That's why so much stuff comes in goddamn, whatever they're called, I can never remember the name, the cardboard stupid things that I can't stand. Digipack or Digi-sleeves or whatever they are. Because it's like they're cutting costs, and it's like the CD is not the mode or the whatever you want to call it, the format that they're putting their focus onto, because the money is in records, because that's what they're selling more of, and that's what people are collecting more of. And I guess the price point is way, way, way higher for records as well. So anyway, someone hasn't put this back in, folder it properly. That's not, this looks like it's kind of like, see how that, like that's been folded incorrectly? I think it's supposed to be like that. Yes, with that on the back, like that. Mid-period Herbie Hancock there, looking like a school teacher. Earlier period Herbie Hancock there. Looks a little bit like Steve Urkel, but a cooler Steve Urkel. Successful Herbie Hancock there. A little bit later than that one. Getting some Grammys. Key guitar Herbie Hancock there, jamming out, I'd say in the 80s, looking by those glasses and the style he's got going. And there we have the liner notes of the double disc. So Watermelon Man is the only song I can confidently say I know. I know Around Midnight because I think John Coltrane does a version of that, doesn't he? It's kind of like a jazz standard. I think who wrote it? Well, Thelonious Monk wrote it, along with those other guys. But I've heard other versions of it. Certainly, I'm either Miles or Coltrane. I think it's John Coltrane does Around Midnight. And you can see here, this one's done by Sonny Rollins with Herbie Hancock playing with him. Another titan of the genre. So Sonny Rollins, who I think is either still alive, Sonny Rollins, or just passed relatively recently. I actually think he's still alive. Let's have a look. Sonny Rollins. Not Sonny Bill Williams. No, he just died. Look at this. Crazy. I didn't even know this. Like, I had a month or 2 months ago, literally. That wasn't in the news. Because the thing is, I've been going through kind of that generation of jazz musicians I've just been talking about. Kind of the ones. So he was born in 1930. which is 10 years before Herbie Hancock. And I've been kind of going through and reading a little bit about them and to seeing how many of them died young. Almost all of them, big and small. Kind of, I guess you could say Miles wasn't that young. He was in his 60s, but still, you'd say he died before his time, and he had quite bad health for a lot of his, kind of the last 20 years of his life as well. But so many of those guys died young from drugs or alcohol or other diseases coming from drugs and alcohol, like liver cancer or something like that. Or it wasn't even someone else. I think it was Eric Dolphy. I was reading about him, and Eric Dolphy is obviously not a household name like some of the other ones, but he died super young. Well, not super, maybe I'm overextending here, but maybe in his 30s, 36. And how did he die? I think he was pretty clean living. Yeah, he did not smoke, did not use drugs or alcohol. He died of some kind of weird, slightly strange disease, I think. Oh, he was a diabetic. Okay. And there was this theory, well, not theory, but kind of the reasons people put forward that even the guys like Eric Dolphy who weren't drug users or alcoholics or but still being a jazz musician or any kind of musician at that time was a hard life, and traveling and, obviously very much kind of living in the night, you're playing clubs and stuff around, and so you're maybe burning the candles at both ends in respect to sleep, and then not eating properly, and then a lot of them were drinking heavily and using other kinds of drugs, and then traveling a lot, and traveling takes its toll on you, and I guess not taking care of the health. Like that guy was a diabetic and maybe didn't have the insulin or whatever he needed. I know there is actually kind of more to that story. I remember reading, but anyway, so many of them died young. It's quite shocking. Even more so than I'd say rock musicians of kind of the 60s era, where so many of those guys died young as well, or of the grunge kind of alternative music era of the 90s, a lot of those guys died young. But I'd say jazz has kind of got them beat. And so, but the kind of two, at least kind of biggish names that hadn't were Sonny Rollins and Herbie Hancock. And so that was relatively recently. And I think when I was reading about this, it was this year, and Sonny Rollins was still alive at that time. And now I just Google, just on this blabbing stuff I'm doing at the moment, and what do you know? He died 2 months ago. And I'm not saying I was the biggest Sonny Rollins fan. Not very familiar with his music at all, but regardless. What else we got here? Cantaloupe Island, Maiden Voyage, Circle, which apparently is a Miles Davis song, The Sorcerer, Tell Me a Bedtime Story, Hidden Shadows, Chameleon. That sounds familiar, Chameleon. As in anyway. Butterfly, people say, okay, Milestones, I know that song, so that's another Miles Davis song. 4 a.m., Come Running to Me, Finger Painting, Stars in Your Eyes. And look, he's got a co-write there with R. Parker Jr., which I guess is Ray Parker Jr., famously did the Ghostbusters theme. And look at that one, Rocket, got a co-write with M. Beinhorn. Excuse me, geez, I got kind of hiccups. Michael Beinhorn, the famous producer, did a lot of albums, still works a lot now, but did a lot of albums in the 90s, a lot of those kind of alternative rock bands. I know he did Celebrity Skin with Hole and got Patty Schimmel fired. St. Louis Blues, or St. Louis. Does Americans call it St. Louis or St. Louis? Yeah, St. Louis, don't you? Yeah. Manhattan. So I'm not sure if that's a good kind of cross-section of his career, because like I said, I'm not really familiar with his career, but the bits and pieces I have heard of his over the years, like I said, the one that I do know is Watermelon Man. I quite enjoyed. And like I said, he's not the kind of guys whose stuff you see around. You see a lot of jazz in the secondhand shops. I'd say jazz is second to classical music as the second most common genre of CDs that are out there because they're not sought after. So a lot of jazz compilations, a lot of kind of artist compilations, Miles Davis' greatest love songs, Miles Davis' greatest hits, Miles Davis Blue Note years, whatever. But in saying that, Herbie Hancock is not an artist that you do see like you see with those other ones. So $1 for that. Look at that. We've also got, that's strange, also got the, usually on the spine we have the name, title, and the artist or whatever. It's also got it here on the top and the bottom, which is, I don't think I've ever seen that before. Usually that is like this. Either clear or kind of grated as it used to be in the kind of 80s and 90s. Unique. Now, this is one that I talked about. Well, I talked about the CDs. Well, actually, this is for next to it. Both I've talked about before. But I did a video about these guys recently. When was it? It would have been earlier this year. Well, I think it's actually last year. And it is the Hives. The Hives. This was $1 as well. Now, when I picked it up, this label I'm peeling off right now, it said $5. And I was picked it up, I was like, $5? Then I looked up and there was a sign on the wall that said all CDs $1. So I assume this is from an old shop. I don't know. Now, this is the album Tyrannosaurus Hives, which is the album after Veni Vidi Vici. Veni Vidi Vicious. This came out in 2004, which dual case hub, buggered, pushed down, but oh well. By this stage, you would say that their star was starting to wane. I would say this album was not as ubiquitous as Veni Vidi Vicious or your new favorite band compilation, which I showed when I did the CD review of the two Hives albums I already own. And so I don't think I've actually seen this one. Is that painted? Yes, it is painted. It's illustrated, it's not in a photo. I don't think I've ever seen this around before in the shop. So not as common. Now, looking at this, the only song that I immediately know is Walk, Idiot, Walk. See the idiot walk. I also know Two Timing Touch and Broken Bones. The other ones I don't think I know. So I now have 3 Hives albums. Almost pushed over the camera there. And I would say, the Hives, I was never a massive fan. That's a little bit scratched up, isn't it? Didn't actually look before I bought it. Look at that. This is it. You can see that? It's like someone's dragged that across where it's to the point. Is that the, oh, that's the top. Dragged something across there to the point that it scratched the printing off. I've got CDs that are much worse condition. I've bought CDs that are much worse condition that play fine. So I'm pretty confident that will be okay. But I was never the hugest Hives fan at all. But I did own your new favorite band back in the early 2000s. This has been water damaged. Okay. I didn't know that at the time. I just kind of grabbed this when I saw it. I picked it up and then saw the price and then checked the price wasn't the price and then I didn't inspect it. So this is a problem I used to actually come across a lot more regularly than I have in the last couple of years. That's water damaged booklets. Can you hear that? It's like hard, it's like solid. And that's what happens is that, well, you don't really need me to tell you what happens when you get water on paper, is that it gets soaked, it's saturated, it's wet, and then over time it dries completely. And in the drying process, I don't know what exactly happens, the chemical or the ink or whatever kind of sticks in the paint, sticks in the pages and the paper, and kind of it's like glue basically. And unless you kind of open this up and dry it out without it stuck together, it's got what's going to happen. And so, I can try to open this, but it's just going to rip it, or at least leave kind of white marks so you can see there what's happening. I don't think I'm going to bother doing that. Not that I really care. It's if the Hives, Tyrannosaurus Hives booklet is damaged. It's not something that it's going to really affect my life in any negative way. But you don't need to really rip it just for the sake of ripping it. So I think I'll leave that as it is. And maybe one day I'll research some sort of remedy for that. Like, I don't know. Maybe you kind of can steam it. That might work. You kind of put it over a kettle and let kind of steam come up. And that would open it up, and then it would be wet again. But then you could dry it without the pages together. You can see it's already been ripped here on the back page. I guess the previous owner did that. And you think, well, how did it get wet? New Zealand is a wet country. I don't know if isn't that known overseas, that people think of New Zealand as kind of green, which it is, and kind of that greenness is from the wetness. From the wetness doth the greenness flow. It rains here a lot. It's been raining off and on today a lot. And that's the kind of thing, especially about Auckland. Auckland's a wet city. Is that? Woke up this morning, it was quite bright and sunny, but you could still feel this kind of sharpness in the air that indicated there was going to be some rain. And it's not, when I say sharpness, it's not even there's really any like dark clouds around or something. It's just something in the atmosphere that you can kind of think, well, don't think this is going to last. So I drove my kid to school, and then I came back home and I had a little sleep, and then I went out again to buy these CDs and other things. And it absolutely poured down, like not just like a little shower like it often does. It pissed down for a good 10 minutes, to the point if it continued, it would have caused surface flooding, but it didn't continue. And then it kind of rained off and on for the next 2 hours. Then it's been sunny now, but I can see it's quite cloudy as well, but with blue sky in between. Those blue sky cloudy days are the worst. Anyway, all this to say that people's houses flood sometimes. I guess that's one way that shit gets damaged. Maybe it's in a box in the garage, or a box downstairs in their house and it gets flooded. Or, in the old days, you're having some mates around, you're having some beers, and you're listening to the new Hives album 22 years ago, and some dickhead puts his beer down and it spills all over it, and you go, oh, it's all wet. But, you think, oh, well, and you just put it back in there and it dries, and then 22 years later, someone buys it second or third hand, and they're trying to fix your problems. Last one. Now you're going to think, what is going on here? Didn't you make a video about this like 2 months ago? Yeah. Where is it? Hang on, I'll find the other one I've got. Frank Black, Teenager of the Year, which I paid $13 for. I think it was the end of mid-May. It was around the middle of May I bought this. So it's now the end of July. So it's 2.5 months ago. And I talked about having, not strongly and desperately wanted this, but this has always been in my mind as an album I wanted. And it's kind of from that era that I particularly collect this kind of music, alternative rock. And, I hadn't seen it around, and I thought, when I bought this for $13, which is more than I usually pay for a secondhand CD, I think, well, this is the kind of thing you're never going to find in a secondhand charity shop. It's because it wasn't popular enough. It didn't sell enough to be able to have all the pieces fit together that you walk in and find it. And what do you know? After, collecting for 6 years, 2.5 months after buying it, I find it for $1 today, just sitting there. Frank Black, Teenager of the Year. So now I've got 2 copies. So you think, well, why did you buy it? Why didn't you leave it? Hey, look, it's a different color. That one's kind of like an aqua blue, and this one's a white. Is there anything else different? Yes, this one's got the code CTX 003 CD. This one's got 618. This is printed in the US. This is the Australian. So is that what's going on? Yes, I think this is the Australian version. Look at that price there, $35.95. This would have been back when it would come out, 94. I think it was 1994. Yes, 1994. Back in 1994, God damn it, sorry. Someone paid $35.95 for this. $35.95 in 1994, that's like inflation, it's like $70. And I repeat myself a lot when I say this, but that's what pisses me off about. Well, I guess it shouldn't, A product is a product. But it's just, I spent so much money. I would think I was a kid back then. What little money you have as a kid, you get for your birthdays or for Christmas or from part-time jobs, delivering newspapers or working in a goddamn supermarket, and making like $4 or $5 an hour if you're lucky. It's like a day's work to buy one CD. Minimum wage now in New Zealand is $24 New Zealand an hour, which is about 12 or 13 American dollars an hour. And I see a CD is about that. It's about 20. A new CD is about $25, but you can find cheaper ones as well, obviously. So it's kind of weird, how... but I guess I don't know. I'm just blabbing here. But anyway, so this is the one I got today. So the one I got today is the Australian version, put out on 4AD and Cortex. And licensed by Shock Records, or distributed by Shock Records, whereas this is just 4AD and Elektra. Okay, so Shock was the distributor in Australia, and Elektra was the distributor in the USA. Both got 22 tracks. Everything else is the same, except for the CD being white paint versus blue. So why did I buy it? And you think, well, that's kind of selfish. Other big Frank Black or Pixies fan might have walked in and seen this. And you're right. And that did come into my mind. But the reason is because I thought, well, more than likely it's just going to be some, skimmer. Those guys who go around and just buy anything that looks remotely like it has value and takes it and then tries to sell it for $15 or $20 on one of the Facebook groups or on Trade Me or one of the markets or something. And I'm not going to do that. I have no intention of selling it. I just want to keep it safe so that if someone else, maybe I come across a fan of Frank Black, because they're out there. Pixies just played here in April, and they played 2 nights at the Auckland Town Hall, which is a decently sized venue, a couple of thousand. I think they sold out the first night. I think they played the whole of one of their albums. Can't remember which album. And then the second one was just a normal set. Anyway, I'm sure one day I'll find someone who I'll say, hey, oh, you want that? I've got that. You can have it. Oh, really? How much? I go, no charge, mate. On the house. Because that's what it's about, isn't it? Well, it's not really, but it kind of is. So yeah, 2 copies of the Frank Black album Teenager of the Year. One for $13, one for $1. See, patience, eh? If I'd been patient. But the thing is that, yeah, it's just such a luck of the draw. I could, like speaking of System of a Down, that's one. Toxicity. Toxicity is an album I've owned before, but I don't have it at the moment. I have all the other System of a Down discography except for Toxicity. And Toxicity is their biggest selling album, and in some ways their most common album, and it should be the one that I can see out there the most. But I've never found it in a secondhand store, and every time I've tried to buy it on one of those trading groups for like kind of $3 or $4 or $5, I always miss out for some reason. But I know that if I just wait, I will absolutely find it for less than $5 eventually, because it's just the law of scarcity. What's the opposite of scarcity? Whatever that is, the law of that. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Yeah, not really any way to finish it off. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.